Right, hello and welcome everyone. It is noon, so I'll hand it off to Evelyn Nelson to get us started here.
Great. Wonderful to see so many friends from across Kansas joining us today. We're really excited to get rolling with our Ready to Learn series. I know myself, I've completed the parent student conferences and looking toward midterms. So I know for me, it just seems really good timing that we're all getting together to learn together around resilience and resilient strategies as we're really getting into the thick of the semesters and supporting many students. I just have a few house cleaning items as we're starting this series today. Your microphones have been muted, but please do unmute and type into the chat. Our echo work together really is the best when we're all sharing things and resources and ideas that we've seen work. So we really do want to hear from you all as well. If you're able to, please do keep your camera on. We're really aiming to develop a community together. So if you're able to, please do that. It's okay, of course, if you're having lunch. We're just really glad and thankful that you were able to join today. It's helpful if you can type in your first and last names, so that helps us get your certificates of attendance to you as well. I should take a step back. I should introduce myself to you. I'm Evelyn Nelson, so I am the PI for our Telehealth Rocks program, as well as a psychologist at KU Med Center. As we get rolling, I know how much work has been put into developing the series. So I just want to thank our whole Telehealth Rocks team for kind of helping get this up and launched, and really your help in trying out some new and extra things that we're adding into the series this go around. So with us today, we have two wonderful presenters. So Melissa Maris is joining us. Dr. Maris is a clinical psychologist and a community psychologist. So really bringing a lot of expertise with her work in schools across the region. Dr. Stephanie Punt is also joining us. Stephanie is a health psychologist and doing a lot of work in neuropsychology right now as a postdoctoral fellow. She's coming to us all the way from California today, so we're really glad to have her join and share ready to learn information. We also have a couple of folks on our coaching team. They're really helping on some of the Facebook group and other activities that are available that complement our Echo today. So we have graduate students Mariana Rincon, and then also James Izzo joining. So as you have questions with the Facebook group or other things, they're excellent resources. So our hopes for today is really to get to know us and everyone on the call and ways that we can support. We're going to define stress and articulate both its detrimental and optimal effects on our performance in life, define well-being and resilience, and connect them to identities as educators, and set an intentional, just initial intention for how we plan to use this in training and what you hope to get out of that. So with that, I'll hand the baton to, I believe, to Dr. Maris. Please, again, we'd love to hear your questions and ideas in the chat or unmute as we go through it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and happy October. This is an October that feels a lot like a November, but we are glad you are here with us. to learn today. So just a quick project disclosure statement, and then I will pass this over to my colleague Stephanie. So we just wanted to disclose nothing. We do not have any financial relationships, and we always are trying to bring the best of what we know from science right now to all of our friends through these echoes, and so that's what we will be focusing on today. So Stephanie, do you want to talk through the next couple pieces in terms of the work that we are going to be doing with folks today and this year?
Yeah, definitely. We have lots of stuff planned for you all. So of course, just in terms of bookkeeping things, which we'll reiterate again, that as soon as we finish up today, we'll definitely make sure you have access to the slides and recordings. We're going to also be doling out attendance certificates kind of every semester. So in case you're kind of wondering and thinking like, why didn't I get one immediately? We're trying to do them in batches. Definitely, if you have other questions about that, give us, get in contact. We're more than happy to help explain things. So in terms of all the exciting stuff we have planned for you. So one, we have monthly echoes where we're going to kind of sit and be part of this community together of learning ways to help bolster our own resilience and also resilience of our kiddos that we're working with just like Dr. Mara said, in terms of like the best tools that we know backed by research. So we want to give you things that are hot off the presses for you to use in your classrooms. To complement that, we're actually going to be providing you all with different classroom resource books. More details to come in terms of when that's going to be sent out, but that's kind of why on one of the registration survey questions, we asked you what grade are you serving or working with. So we're going to be sending you some books that hopefully you might find helpful. We also are going to have a Facebook group, and so that Facebook group is now live, and this nifty QR code, if you actually scan it with your phone, it's going to send you to that website to join it if you want. And so what we're going to do on our Facebook group is one, be able to help continue the conversation that we have here once a month and be able to support each other. We'll have weekly fun facts, hopefully a couple of times a week about different brain stress, health fun facts. Have welcoming Wednesdays. Each Wednesday, we're going to introduce one of ourselves. You all included can join in on this just so we can get to know each other, because sometimes right when things are asynchronous or even in this virtual space, things can feel kind of disconnected. And definitely if there's, we're also going to offer one-on-one coaching for the first time ever, which I'm definitely really excited about. I know the team's really excited about. And so say if there's different strategies that we're talking about during our echo session, and you're like, man, I just can't figure out how to set aside time for that. Or I can't see how I could implement that in a classroom setting. Or man, I have this problem student I really want to talk to someone about. Or right, the sky's the limit. If even if it's just trying to figure out like how can I get my family on the same schedule to try some of these things out. We're definitely sky's the limit in terms of topics, and we're here to help support you kind of through this journey through the year. We'll also make sure emails sent out with different resources, links, and tips kind of associated with the strategies that we talk about. And we're also going to, stay tuned for more information about posters that we're going to send you all, as well as short videos. I know a lot of information at once.
Okay, so we are going to get our content started here today with a word cloud. So here in a second, oh, and there it is.
The link is live, yes.
Fantastic. If you can click on the link that Robert just put in the chat, and this is hopefully pretty straightforward, but we want you to open up that link. You can skip the part about putting in your name and then just tell us how you are feeling. So how are you feeling right now? And it can be any word, feeling word. And so what Christy's going to do is switch over into the word cloud so that we can check in and see how folks are feeling. As you all are sharing how you're feeling, just wanted to highlight that this is a particular grounding strategy that is one of my favorites. We're actually doing a lot of different things when we identify and share our feeling state. This is a great strategy in terms of checking in with any group of people of any age, is this feeling kind of approach. Identifying a feeling is actually really hard for a lot of people. So knowing how we're feeling, saying it out loud validates that our feelings are okay, that other people's feelings are okay, that everybody has feelings all the time. And just by recognizing our feeling state, we're starting to strengthen that connection between how we're feeling in our body and our brains, and making sure that everything is all connected. So I think here in a minute, Christy, if you want to pull, there we go. And those words are coming up. I think I saw a little hint that maybe somebody added an emoji, which is very exciting. But let's see what we have here. So stressed, tired, calm, overwhelmed, stretched. That's a good one. Stretched emotionally, stretched intellectually, perhaps stretched physically. All good ways to be stretched. Also can be stretched too far, potentially. Undervalued, disorganized. So absolutely. So it's that time of year when if we had been feeling like we were kind of getting through and managing things well, oftentimes for ourselves and for the people we work with, young people in schools, absolutely. This is the time when things kind of start to fray a little bit more at the edges, and it starts becoming really clear that that there's too much on our plate and kind of experiencing too much stress there. Hungry, rushed, chaotic, thin. So a lot of words that are kind of suggesting not enough resources and too much need, and potentially trying to juggle too many balls at the same time. Also just want to highlight some of the other words here. So good, hopeful. I like jacked, that's a good one. Sleepy, curious, full, little, mad. And so lots of different words and lots of different feeling states. So just want to, again, highlight that this kind of activity, even if it's just asking how someone's feeling, and then sharing that is a great step. There are also a number of different ways that this kind of check-in can be useful, even when perhaps you want to do it very quickly and not walk through how people are feeling. So if you have, or if someone has, for example, a feelings chart on their wall or something, sometimes people will use weather to check in, or, roses and thorns, or kind of whatever that piece is. But if you have a visual, even asking a young person or adults just to point at their feeling can be really powerful. Again, the magic here is identifying a feeling and recognizing it, and then also then recognizing that we all have feelings, and we all have feelings all the time. I'm a big advocate of radical acceptance of feelings. There are no good or bad feelings. Some feelings are easier and harder, but all of our feelings are okay. And we spend a lot of times, I think, unnecessarily feeling bad about how we're feeling. And so kind of just recognizing that can be really helpful. So I think we're going to move to the next word cloud. And this one is, what one word comes to mind when you think of stress? Fear, heavy, overwhelmed, life, headaches, suffocating. Headaches, anxiety, overflow, too many expectations, draining, challenges, rigid, tension. You all are doing an excellent job identifying these words. Yeah, so some alignment across all of us that are here today in terms of some of the words that come to mind when we think of stress. overwhelmed is overwhelmingly common in terms of the words that you all are choosing. That's why it's getting so big, heavy headaches. So identifying a lot of physical kinds of symptoms that are associated with stress, as well as potentially some things that are contextually causing stress, and also some other feelings that are associated with stress. So as we move forward into our content today, I would just invite you to take a nice deep breath, blow it out, wiggle your toes, right? And try to stay in this space with us. If you need to take a break, take some space, please do so. We respect you as adult learners with us here today. And we are here. Please type questions in the chat if you have any concerns, or if we can clarify, please do so, and ask for that help. One of the things we absolutely want to do with not just young people, but everyone, is encouraging folks to ask for help when they need it. And there are a lot of resources here that we are excited to share with you. So ask for what you need and we'll see what we can do to support you. So Stephanie, I think I am handing it over to you. Thank you, Christy, for managing our word clouds.
Thank you so much. Also, just from my own reflection from y'all's word clouds and just, how stress is experienced right now, I think, so on average, the average adult can only name about 3 emotions. So I just want to put that out there, that you all are definitely way above average in your ability to name emotions and be able to kind of just, even put words to what it is that you all are experiencing. So I know that we all are very happy that you're here and taking this time for you, because, right, you all have very, very busy lives. You have lots of different stressors and things vying for your attention at the same time. And so just the fact that you're here, I think that definitely counts as a huge, just a huge accomplishment and self-care moment for yourselves. So definitely, I know it seems silly, but it's pat on the back worthy for being here. So let's just get the obvious out of the way, right? Stress is inevitable. And so we want to talk just a little bit about, right, why, stress can be good, it can be bad. And there's all the things in between, right? So it can be adaptive. Maybe it's going to get us ready for a big competition, right? If you think about sports, maybe it's, right, kind of like the fun kind of stress. Someone's getting married, right? It's a positive outcome potentially, but also at the same time, it's all those little logistic things can be stressful. Stress also too, right? It can be, over time really wear us down physically, mentally, but in the short term, right, it can help prepare us and get us ready for all those different things we have to get done, so to say. In terms of stress, right, stress impacts us all differently. We're not, maybe something that stresses me out or stresses Dr. Mars or Dr. Nelson out isn't going to stress you out because of, just our different experiences or things that we have going on at the same time. That's why it's so, I guess, frustrating sometimes too, right? If we have strategies that we usually go to when we're stressed and we find out that they're not working quite the same way, right? It's, it's kind of like, how can we adapt in that moment to help take tools that we know, right, and kind of retool them for the current stressor that we're experiencing. All right, next slide, please. So you all probably know a lot of the biology behind stress, but I feel like one main thing to think about stress, or like a signal to my own body, right, or myself, and noticing that I'm experiencing stress is, right, it's that fight, flight, or freeze response. It's an automatic fire alarm. Our brain is basically telling us that something isn't quite right in our environment, right? It's either like a test due date, right, or a big project due date. And so it's something that we can, experience both physically and internally within our own verbal environment, just within our thoughts. And so if you think about, like, you want to geek out about the brain stuff that's happening, right? It's there's a lot of things happening. Our body, right, is going to take in some kind of environmental or internal cue. It then has to run it up the chain of command, so to say, in your head, and where our frontal lobes happen. And up there, there's your frontal lobes are kind of like your CEO, the boss making decisions about things. And so kind of up there is where, right, based on your past experiences or kind of all the different stressors that are currently grabbing at your attention in that moment, your brain then decides, is this something that I'm going to stress out about and start that whole signaling cascade? Or is it something where I can go, oh, it's not that big a deal? So like a good example would be, say you're walking outside and you think you see a snake, right? You might step back immediately. That's your automatic response to it. And then as your brain kind of goes through all the different checks and balances, you realize, oh, it was a stick. It wasn't a snake. So I can kind of keep moving on with my day. So if you think about it, though, if you're constantly going through, if your body's constantly going through that system, right, that chain of command to figure out, like, is this a stressor? Is it not a stressor? Do I need to run away or hunker down and get stuff done? It's tiring, right? Because your body is not meant for this chronic stress kind of reality that we live in. And so, and it's, when we start becoming chronically stressed, that's when we start, right, feeling that sense of overwhelmed. We can feel burned out. We can, just physiologically, our body starts to wear down a lot too. So all the fun things with stress. Next slide, please. So again, right, just so we're all using the same kind of terminologies, there's lots of things that can impact our stress, include our cognition or our mind, right, our internal monologue with ourselves, how we behave, and also physiologically kind of what's going on. So all three of these things combined, right, can really impact our perceived level of stress. And, with that perception of stress, kind of to what extent our body is getting worn down with things. And I know you're probably thinking like, yes, Stephanie, we already know that there's lots of things that are bad that can happen to our bodies with stress, but right, it's like, and what else can we do to try to combat that, right? If you're already doing all these things. So hopefully being able to take this time together through our Facebook community, and also just knowing that we all exist and we're here to help. We can potentially help you retool some strategies that you're already using, because you're all definitely very resilient individuals. I mean, you're here, you're doing the work. And so we definitely want to help work with you to help kind of retool some things that maybe you're already using, but maybe just because of the different stressors going on might need that just kind of like a tune-up, so to say. Next slide, please. And in terms of what's happening in our brain when we're stressed, lots of things happen. I feel like sometimes, right, we kind of forget that our brain is like a symphony, right? That even though there's all these different parts that do things, together is what makes this music. So together, if you look at those brightly colored images, it's just kind of highlighting that our brain, it's not like you will use one part in isolation, right? There's big functional groups that work together to, lead us to a thinking being. So things, right, whenever I'm stressed, I know I lose sleep. So, in the environment of inadequate sleep, maybe you're not eating as healthy as you were, or skipping meals, feeling physically or psychologically or mentally distressed, that actually increases all these different signaling cascades because your brain thinks it's like under attack. And then if you're doing this kind of path for a long time, your ability to pay attention to things, your ability to remember stuff, right, to attend to and learn it, goes down. You have difficulty finding the right words, and you overall feel fatigued. And when we, say if I take you over to the clinic and I do all my testing on you, for people who are chronically stressed or distressed actively, that, it actually, shows your testing results will look as if you do have isolated weaknesses in all these areas. So definitely stress does impact our cognition and how we think about things. All right, next slide, please.
And I think everything that Stephanie's talking about here really is what we refer to when we think of as the mind-body connection, right? Which is something that I feel like a lot of us hear, but I do feel like it can be helpful to use that language or other kind of language around mindfulness, this kind of information or the words that we choose around stress, just as a reminder to ourselves to check in that it is all connected. And we all know that it's all connected, but sometimes it's easy for us to get really stuck and forget that it's all connected, not just for us, but also for the people around us. And so kind of going back to what Stephanie was saying in terms of that cognitive load, and when we are experiencing chronic stress over time, it does mean that our brains actually get dumber and we do things slower. We are more forgetful. We start to get off of routines that we've had for a long time. And so if we start to think about what this looks like, not just for us and our colleagues, but also young people in our context who are also experiencing stress. This may be part of the reason why the young friends that you're working with never remember their fill in the blank, right? So that could be a part of what's happening, is that there is so much stress happening that the cognitive load becomes so overwhelming that we just can't keep up with it. And so I know for many of us, we can get into a space where we feel like, well, that sounds great, but I just can't slow down right now. There's just too much to do. And so I just can't actually, get things off my plate. But the thing is that either you're getting it off your plate or it's going to start falling off your plate anyways, because our brains just can only do so much and our bodies can only do so much. So remembering that mind-body connection is always a part of what's happening with us. And that by trying to address, even in really small ways, the amount of stress that either we're experiencing it or how we're coping with it, that we can actually then start to heal and repair and shift how our mind and body are working and how they're connecting. We can go to the next slide, please, Christine. So strategies that improve mind-body awareness. So again, this is something mind-body, we understand that our brains are in our body, that it's all connected. But a lot of times in terms of how we act day to day and in practice, this is something that we have to work at and that everybody has to work at it. Some people have to work at this a little bit more than others, but one of the kind of foundations of managing stress and resilience and coping is improving and enhancing our mind-body awareness. So things that we can do that actually improve that awareness, relaxation. Deep breathing is a really good one. One of the reasons I like deep breathing a lot is because we experience an immediate physiological effect when we take a deep breath. I would invite you to take a really nice deep breath right now, then blow it out and just notice how your body is feeling. This is also one of the reasons why this is such a great strategy for young people, is because you don't have to sell it really hard because it immediately works. It doesn't mean that it's going to de-escalate an intense crisis, but it does mean that by taking a deep breath, one thing is when we're breathing in, we can't talk. And so we are quiet, we take a nice deep breath in, and we're just getting oxygen to the different parts of our body that need it so that we can make better decisions and try to use this prefrontal cortex in nice, good ways that are nice and logical. Guided imagery is another strategy that a lot of folks find helpful. Folks who perhaps the relaxation and the deep breathing, they can't get there with those strategies. Guided imagery is another one that some people find really, really helpful. Creative art therapies. And so finding different ways to make things and create things that are helping us create that awareness of how our mind and our body, how our feeling states and our thoughts are connected to the way that our body feels are great strategies. Things like prayer and meditation, biofeedback, and then also gratitude. So there was a lot of research that started really coming out when COVID first shut everything down, 2.5 years ago, about the real power of gratitude and how just saying thank you to someone else and being specific about it not only helps them because they're hearing that gratitude, but it actually helps us. And it actually improves our mind-body connection, our awareness of that, and can actually improve our feeling state and reduce stress. Go to the next slide, please, Christy. So benefits of using mind-body strategies. So one of the things that I think is often surprising, I forget all the time, is how effective some of these strategies can be, even though they seem pretty simple. And how actually by engaging in some of these strategies regularly over time, we can actually change the way that our bodies and our brains are working, which I think is pretty incredible. So I am a person like many of you all. I've got a lot on my plate. I often feel like I'm doing 25 things at the same time, none of them very well, and feel like I have a lot of stress. And then I, listen to Stephanie talk about stress, and then I just feel bad. And I think, wow, what am I doing to my heart, and what am I doing to my organs? But then this is part of the benefit, right? Is there are some of these pretty simple strategies that if we practice them over time, can actually repair and even improve our ability to manage stress moving forward, which I find very reassuring. So it alters gene expression using these mind-body strategies. It increases our awareness. It improves our ability to notice cues and change interpretation. When we find ourselves being really quick with our words, right, and we immediately are firing back without really taking time to think and consider, a lot of times we're off base, right? And so being able to have kind of that presence of good mind-body connection, it lets us have a more nuanced perception of what's happening. We notice cues that we might have missed before. And so all of a sudden, this young friend who we think was just trying to make our lives miserable, we notice that, oh, wow, they look really tired. Or, oh, actually, I think they had to skip lunch, or maybe they came in without breakfast, or they usually do this and it didn't happen. Lets us notice other cues. It decreases our perception of stress, and Stephanie's going to talk about this in a little bit, but there are the way things exist and the way that we experience them, which are different and can be different, but it really pushes this idea of a growth mindset. So instead of these are all the things I can't do, that we start focusing on what we can do. We start using some of the growth mindset kind of language. So I can't do this yet. I can't do this right now. So we start adding those pieces at the end of some of these statements that just leave us feeling really stuck. And that's something that happens as we start to develop and use these strategies more often. Improved cognitive flexibility. So Steph said at the beginning, we were doing that feeling word exercise. Most adults can only identify 3. And so a benefit of being able to and regularly identifying feeling states is we actually improve our ability to identify feelings and identify our own feeling state, but also having that cognitive flexibility to kind of think through and to be able to understand, I'm feeling disappointed versus feeling concerned versus feeling sad. And that requires us to actually have that cognitive flexibility. So we're building those tools as we go when we're using these kinds of strategies. And also with this kind of work that we can actually decrease perceptions of pain. So in addition to a lot of other things, when we are chronically stressed, as Stephanie said, we can actually see the impact in terms of cognitive functioning on neurotests. We can also see it in brain scans. It also changes the way that we experience the world around us, obviously, right? Duh. But also pain perception, right? So things that might not have hurt as much now hurt a lot, or things that should actually hurt don't. And so it changes the way all of that works. And so sometimes I try to remind myself, especially when I'm really stressed, that if things feel really disorienting and disoriented, it could really be that stress is having such an impact on my life that it's changing the way that I am experiencing the environment around me. And that's part of why things feel so off kilter. And then I think about young people in the classroom who are feeling that way and how much that interferes with their ability to benefit from all the great things that are happening in classrooms and schools. And so a lot of this is around kind of making sure that we're in that good space to be able to learn and interact with other people and do our main jobs. We can go to the next slide, please, Christy. So what else protects against stress? So these are not going to come as any kind of surprise, but I do think this is the kind of thing that is a valuable kind of check-in for ourselves. It is easy when there are so many things, competing demands, for us to lose track of any one of these things or parts of any one of these things. And these are the kinds of things that if we can put things in place and put structures in place so we are regularly attending to these kinds of protective factors, it benefits us in all kinds of ways. So social support and whatever that looks like for you or for anybody. So connecting with other humans, and that's a really important protective factor around stress. Healthy lifestyle behaviors. And so, yes, this includes, what you're eating and what you're doing with your body, how you're moving it. But whenever we talk about healthy lifestyle, I always encourage folks to think less about running a marathon and more about small kind of everyday differences that you can do or make so that you just get a little bit more exercise or you just drink a little bit more water, right? And so it's slow and the change will be slow. But when we have those kinds of strategies, when we take little bitty bites at a time in terms of changing our behavior, we're far, far more likely to be successful than if, I were to get up tomorrow and say, as a non-runner, I'm just going to start running a marathon. That's not very realistic. I'm more likely to fail. fail. And then it's just another thing to feel bad about, right? Much more likely that I can commit to starting to walk an extra block around the neighborhood and doing that every day for the next month. That is healthy lifestyle behavior as well. Adopting a growth mindset, we talked a little bit about that before. It really is incredible how much it can help just to add some of those words. One of the ones that I try to practice when I can is, instead of I have to go to work, I have to go to the grocery, what happens if you just change I get to? I get to go to the grocery. I get to go to work. I get to pick up my children from school today. And all of a sudden, even though immediately I just kind of want to stick my tongue out at it and be like, man, that's silly, but it does change the way that we think about and approach that kind of work and that kind of effort. Celebrating small wins and having that self-confidence. So knowing what we are doing well and feeling good about it and feeling proud of ourselves, and absolutely celebrating the small wins. Every win, take the W, right? Take the W and write it out as long as you can and feel good about it and celebrate it. That's great when we can help other people celebrate small wins, but we need more celebration of small wins all the time. And then also mindfulness, so that awareness and gratitude, gratitude towards other people, gratitude towards ourselves, gratitude kind of as a regular practice that we can do in lots of different ways every day. Go to the next slide, Christy. So that's the good news, right? So the bad news is that stress is real. You all know that. It's part of your lived experience. And there are a lot of things that are happening in the world that we can't do anything about to make them less stressful. But the good news is that we can do something about how stress affects us, how we cope with stress, even how we perceive stress. So there are ways that we can change our experience of stress, which is really what we're talking about with these strategies. There are more effective ways of dealing with strategies or dealing with stress than just to avoid it, to just keep going, which I think is a lot of times what our brains, at least my brain, is telling me to do. There's a lot of suck it up, buttercup going on, right? So like, yep, this is hard, but just keep going, just keep going. And then I think of Dory swimming around, right? And just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Well, guess what? Like, you get tired eventually, and then you have to stop swimming. So there are other ways to deal with stress rather than just avoiding it and doing what you're already doing. And the good thing too is that all of these pieces that we're talking about absolutely translate in terms of what we do every day when we're interacting with other humans. So with your colleagues, with your family, with your neighbors, with your friends, and also the work that we do. And so just that reminder that the great news is we're all human. The tough part is we're all human. The more that we can human with other humans, the better off we're all going to be. But it really is our greatest superpower. So remembering that if it's working for us, there is a way that we can translate this to work with other people. And that's part of why we wanted to make sure that we had this coaching bench available, because we really do think that these kinds of strategies that we're talking about have applications in all kinds of different contexts. Sometimes it's hard to see what that is when you're really close to it. And so we want to help with that problem solving. And then I think, Stephanie, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Yep, my turn. Yeah, just, with what Melissa said too, I think there's so much we can learn from each other. And definitely, even though we're the ones presenting these things, we want to definitely, we hope that over this next school year too, that you all will feel comfortable enough in sharing kind of what's worked for you all, what's not working, and can kind of band together to kind of come up with maybe different strategies too, that we haven't even thought about, to kind of address these different, just how we talk about stress, how we deal with stress personally, or even within the classroom. So, definitely, even though, right, this is kind of structured for us to, talk about stress and resilience strategies and have some good take-home messages, this is definitely a place to kind of, try things out. And definitely we want and thrive on feedback too, in terms of, how to make this better and more meaningful for you all too. So something too you want to mention, this session has a lot of definitions in it and kind of just getting us all oriented to stress and how we're defining it together. So I know, like, well-being and resilience, they've become buzzwords in the media, especially just with the pandemic. And for a lot of us, right, whenever we hear well-being and resilience, sometimes those terms might just kind of ring hollow, right? You're like, okay, now are they going to tell me? So just in its purest definition, kind of how Melissa, Evelyn, and I are kind of approaching things is that, in terms of well-being, when we're talking about well-being, we're just thinking about, research-wise, like the perception of how good one's life is overall, like your life satisfaction. And combining that with someone's propensity to experience life in a positive way. So distilled down, well-being is kind of comprised of life satisfaction and positive affect. When we say positive affect, we mean kind of like approaching things in that positive or growth mindset. With well-being too, right, as we'll talk about in a second, it's dimensional. It's not like an either or, it's not black or white. Resilience, it's got lots of different definitions out there. Resilience is not suck it up, buttercup, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It depends so much on someone's context and all the different things that are happening in that person's life, everything that has happened, everything that will happen. So when we talk about resilience, all we're talking about is someone's capacity or ability to bounce back from life's ups and downs, the curveballs, the random Hail Mary passes, right? All the things that that can kind of come our way. So in terms of well-being and resilience, when we kind of talk about those terms, that's kind of distilled down in its purest sense. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, resilience, ordinary magic, right? We all do it. Next slide, please. So when we talk about well-being and stress, right, you may have seen like a dual factor model for different, mental health conditions, leading to a propensity for different things. There's also a dual factor model of well-being. Well-being is not the opposite of stress. It is actually different, just like positive and negative affect. They are not on the same scale. They're two different. You can, be positive and negative at the same time. The best example I can think of is ice cream. I get an ice cream cone. I'm excited. My positive affect is up, but then the ice cream falls off and hits the ground, right? There's some negative affect. So I could have both positive and negative affect at the same time. So kind of the same way, right? I can have well-being and stress at the same time. So we think about well-being and stress being on different kind of continuums, just like being happy and sad about that ice cream cone. At any point in life, any point during the day, we can really fluctuate between or among these different dimensions. Sometimes we might have high well-being, right? We're doing everything that we can to take care of ourselves and living within in a supportive environment. We're thriving, little distress. Maybe we're pushed to our max. We feel like we're flourishing, but also at times, right, we can be doing everything we can for ourselves to take care of ourselves, but the stressors in our lives are also really high. And, maybe we don't feel overwhelmed, but we kind of hit that point where we feel like we're struggling. And we might, be in that position today too, right? And so just thinking about, right, if there's this continuum of stress and well-being, that it's not either or. I'm not, doing really well at well-being and I can never experience stress. Sometimes, right, you have high stress, high well-being, maybe you have low stress, right, but you feel like you're really languishing. So in terms of like, right, just something to kind of think about yourself, right, is just kind of where would you place yourself in that square? If we think about well-being and distress or just stress in general on a continuum. And maybe I know for me, sometimes like depending on the different workload that I have or the types of people that I'm going to see, maybe sometimes, even in the day, I'll cycle between high well-being, low well-being, high distress, low distress. But then it's just kind of thinking about and being able to reflect and just acknowledge, right? Like, hey, sometimes this is kind of the way it is. And right, what are some go-to strategies that are helpful? Is it talking to people about what's going on? Is it kind of taking those deep breaths and just taking a moment just to kind of be in the moment, right? And be mindful of what's going on around me. Next slide, please. And so something too that can be helpful, or another strategy that you could adapt it for, our younger people that we're working with, or even just for ourselves or within our own families. Something that I know, right, when I'm kind of assessing my own well-being or stress level and how that can cycle throughout the day even, there's this thing called the parking lot. And we'll definitely send that out too for you to kind of work on your own. But so there's a thing called a parking lot activity. And so if you could list, right, kind of mentally, like jot down kind of what's going on in your life right now. Is it needing to find someone to babysit the kids? Is it, someone to go walk the dog? Is it all those meetings are happening at once, right? And so you could kind of think to yourself of like, okay, what is all going on in my life right now? I can jot this down here. And then kind of listing out like, okay, so what's within my control, what's not within my control. That's kind of at the essence what this activity is trying to get at, is to kind of think about like what's going on in your life, and then of those things, what's kind of in your control. So maybe it's need someone to walk my dog. Do I have a neighbor that can come, help me out with that? Are there things that are going on in my life that I feel like there's no control over, right? So sometimes it's helpful to kind of be able to label what is actually kind of within my control, outside my control, and how can I frame that in a way such that I can pick smaller pieces of it that I can control. So maybe there's a huge project due. You might feel like there's no control over it, but maybe, are there certain things that you could assign dates to, or, chip away slowly at it such that it feels like there are things that are doable and more kind of within your wheelhouse or within that, your skill set to kind of build on that positive momentum. And so definitely, this is something too, if you are looking at this parking lot activity and you're like, wow, Steph, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is not, being able to, there's nothing I have control over. I'm really having a hard time with this. This is something too that we can work on in more of that one-on-one coaching platform too. But just want to put it out there because I know this is like an involved activity of just to kind of start thinking about things is like, okay, are there things that I can park in my parking lot, right? In terms of things I have control. And if there's things that are left, right, that aren't quite fitting in my parking lot, how can I make it such that they can fit into that parking lot, maybe just in a different way? All right, next slide, please.
So one of the things we wanted to make sure that we were doing is in talking about our own self-care, your self-care, kind of things we can do to support, is to make sure that we are directly talking about immediate or short-term applications in the school context, and really thinking about how we can streamline in terms of finding ways to change the entire context so that it helps us and supports us, but then also supports other adults in our school community and also young people. So the great thing is that all of this content that we're talking about absolutely applies to not just you, but your colleagues and also young people that are in your classrooms and in your schools. Stress is a thing that all humans deal with, and therefore learning strategies to cope with stress is something that we can all do. And it's something that when we do together, we actually do way better than when we try to do it just by ourselves. That's part of the reason for this echo, right? Is seeking out social support to be able to do some of these things maybe just a little bit differently so that they're more effective and help our lives, generally speaking. So in terms of kind of direct application and really thinking about this in terms of young people, the first thing I'm going to do is give you permission just to not change anything at all. You have permission, right? And you do have control over what you change and don't change in this moment. And so part of that permission can be not changing at all. That is a choice, just like if you choose to make a change, it's also a choice, right? And so I think part of what sometimes frustrates me is that I find myself drawn to these, if you're so stressed out, read this article. And then at the end, all I'm left with is feeling like I need to do a whole lot of things to change. And that just leads me to feel a lot more stressful. So giving you permission to make choices about things that you can make choices around. And also really celebrating the things that you're already doing that are probably helping you manage your stress levels. So even when we feel really, really, really overwhelmed, there are likely things that we are doing or things that are in our context that are helping us feel less overwhelmed than we would if those things weren't there. And so kind of thinking about in your current context, whether that's a classroom or a therapy room or some other kind of space with other kinds of people, think about what's already happening in terms of ways to manage stress, ways to cope. Maybe you're already doing some feelings identification pieces. Maybe you're already doing some deep breathing. Maybe you're already doing a mindful minute or, a jumping jacks minute or some sort of regular incorporation of exercise in your life. Maybe you're already trying to drink more water. Congratulations, success. You're doing things to cope with your stress. And now we can just maybe do nothing else or do a little bit more of that. So thinking about what you say and do that's already happening in your classroom. And for a lot of times in schools, this is just recognizing that school itself is already structured. It's consistent and predictable. That alone is an incredible, incredible resource. And so is there something that you say to young people every time you see them or every time they enter? Is there something you regularly say when you say goodbye? Those are all things to listen to and to say, oh, what am I already doing that's contributing to kind of having a positive climate in my classroom or in my school? Think about what others are saying and doing. Are there other regular things that folks say or do that are helping in terms of identifying feelings, managing feelings, and coping effectively? A different way to approach this is thinking about times or activities in your day that feel like they're successful, and then just describing it. So when is it? What's happening? How is it happening? Where and when? And I like to use this strategy because sometimes there's just a part of the day that feels better, but I'm not entirely sure why. But if I start to think about it and I kind of describe it like I'm trying to tell someone else what it was like, then I can say, oh, I'm always outside when I'm describing these situations, or I'm always around this person, or it feels like there's a small task that I can accomplish. What is the thing about it that helps that time feel good? Because that's going to be a good clue of other things that maybe you can do a little bit more of that will help in terms of managing stress. You can also look for clues on walls or school materials. And so if there are things that you're already doing, if you have some sort of classroom curriculum or something that's showing up on a poster, look at what's already there, right? We don't have to recreate the wheel. Sometimes we just need to remember to do the things that were put in place to help us cope. And that's okay too. And again, celebrating what you're already doing and connecting the dots between whatever you're already doing and whatever it is that you want to do more of. And I love this, what I can't control and what I can control kind of circle. This one is exactly what Stephanie was talking about a second ago with the parking lot activity, just more geared towards kids. But this is so true. And this is so true, I think, for all of us, but it resonates a lot with me. I think I spend a lot of energy trying to control things that I can't control, and that creates a lot of stress. And so if I just remind myself and reorient, okay, what I can control is myself, my thoughts, my actions, my feelings. That's what I can be in charge of. I can't be in charge of a whole lot else. And so spending our times and investing in the things that we can control can really help us in terms of managing our stress. We go to the next slide, please, Christy. And some other kinds of pieces in terms of trying to get really concrete here, looking for opportunities to generalize and streamline. So anything that we are doing to help young people thrive in any context can be generalized to other people. So if we're doing this for the kids, let's do it just a little bit different for the adults too. If we're doing it for the adults, we can do it for the kids. If we're doing it for humans in a school, it means we can do it for humans in a community, right? And so generalizing to other populations, it doesn't have to change that much for it to be applicable to other kinds of contexts. Again, this is where it's always nice and we get a lot of energy doing something that's bright, shiny, and new. But in the end, it takes a lot more than to just adapt something that we're already using. And this is where really, if you're just shaking your head saying, I have no idea what you're talking about, Melissa, reach out to one of our coaches and just say, hey, here's something we're doing for kids. Tell me how I might be able to do this for adults or for parents or for caregivers. And let us do that heavy lifting of trying to come up with some examples. And double down on whatever you're currently doing that's working. So do it more often, do it for longer, and do it more intensely. So if you have a mindful minute already incorporated in your day somewhere and you really like it, do it more often, right? You already know that it works, it's been effective, so just do it a little bit more frequently. That's an easy way to try to find some traction and to get that change underway. And then I always kind of have this idea of sort of go big and give it away. So find ways to connect the dots to other things so that, again, we don't have to redo everything each and every time and do that learning curve. And then giving it away, meaning try to find other people who you can share this with and teach it to so they can do it themselves, right? And so this is where the more that we get other people involved in this adventure and in this journey, the easier it's going to be on us later, because they're also then going to in turn support us. And then we're also building their capacity so we don't have to do it. Very concrete example, instead of you leading whatever the mindfulness exercise is or the mindfulness minute, can a young person lead it? Can your classroom aide lead it? Can someone from another classroom or someone in the hallway, can a parent lead it? Can the librarian? Just thinking about ways, again, that we're grabbing back small little bits of time so that we can save that energy in different ways. So transform your go-to mindfulness strategy into classroom routine, another concrete strategy. Give yourself permission to take space. And this is one that I think we constantly have to remind ourselves of, is that we are human, which means that we are only human. We're superheroes, but we're only human. It is okay to say, I need a moment, and to expect that that space is going to be respected, and that those boundaries are okay. You just have to come back after the moment. That's the commitment that you're making, is if I'm going to say I need a moment, I'm then committing that I'm going to come back after you give me a moment, so that I can have some space to take a deep breath, and make sure I have my good thinking brain on. And then this idea of put it in a box, very much like the parking lot activity, but put it in a box, get it out and away. So this idea is sometimes just writing down all of our worries, having students write down all their worries, crumble it up, put it in the trash can. Organizing things. So that's part of the reason so many of us have so many to-do lists, is that we get satisfaction out of organizing all the things we have to do. But then also scheduling it for later. So, okay, yep, this is a big thing. I need to worry about it. I'm going to do that later. So at 4 p.m., I'm going to schedule 10 minutes to worry about it. And that's what I'm going to worry about it. And you'd be surprised how well this works. These are all strategies that work for grown-ups, for kids. It acknowledges feelings, but helps put us in a position where we are managing and controlling it, rather than it controlling and managing us, which is part of what we're trying to do. So we can go to the next slide. We are wrapping up for today. So just wanted to highlight some key takeaways. So one, stress is a thing. It's everywhere. It's a reality, but there are things that we can do. We can take action. Mind-body strategies, that awareness, and then doing something to cope with that, can reduce our experience of stress. But it does take practice, right? Small changes and a lot of practice to try to repeat it, right? We want to make this part of our general routine. That is what makes the thing that we're trying to do to reduce the stress not so stressful itself, which is what we're trying to do overall. Is we're trying to employ strategies and embrace them, and integrate them, so that it's not harder to do the thing than it is to actually have the thing, which is stress. And so moving forward, definitely we have a few minutes left for questions, but again, want to encourage you all, reach out to us with emails in the interim, join us on Facebook, ask questions, reach out for coaching. And we want to help. Also, if you have success stories that you want to share, please let us know those too. If you just want another human who you can call and say, hey, let me tell you about this really awesome thing that happened today, we would love to be those people for you. So reach out and let us know. We'd love to chat with you, kind of problem solve through things, ask questions and ask for help. Help us make this useful for you, and in the context that you're working in. So we have a couple minutes left. Steph, anything you wanted to highlight that I missed or mistook? Please feel free to jump in. Evelyn, you as well. And certainly if there are any questions or things in the chat, maybe that you all want to raise our attention to.
Yeah, I think definitely great points. And I think, Melissa, just kind of the way you talked about things is kind of, definitely ring true for my own life too, in terms of trying to define can versus cannot control. And with that too, just broadly, we mentioned that we're working on classroom posters. And so definitely and we hope to eventually send those posters out to you all to have as well to use in your classrooms. And so if you have any suggestions in terms of what you would like on those posters, please let us know. You're more than welcome to help us create this. Additionally, too, as you have time, there is a survey link that we would invite you to fill out. I know that your time is very precious, but any information that you can provide us with, your information will never be shared. It doesn't go out to anyone. It just helps us kind of make this better and hopefully inform the next go around of things. So in a sense, by filling out the survey, you're helping us continue to provide these kinds of programs to communities. We just really appreciate you all being here.
So I'll just wrap us up. We do hope to see you back with our next session on November 3rd from noon to 1. Please, I think some folks are still filling us in on which book. for the classroom resource books. And we're also really curious to hear what you think about the books and, what you like and what you don't like. So keep in touch about that. And the slides and materials will be shared back with you just here in the next day or so.
And I just wanted to add, if you found any graphic today to be a useful one that you'd like to use in your classroom, let us know, because we are preparing posters that we can send out. They'll be, the 11 by 17 in color. So really excited to provide whatever resources we can that will help you as you, put these techniques and awarenesses to in place in your classroom.